Take me to. Okay, let's see. Okay. Have I finally figured it out? Have I finally figured it out, baby? There I am. Okay, let's see. Okay. Yeah. Have I finally figured it out? Where's the echo? Have I finally figured it out, baby? Okay. And if I go to Twitch. Oh, shit. Not gonna answer that. Uh, fucking hell, man. Ah, some people. Some people. Okay, fucking hell. Alright, Twitch. Make sure I'm going good. There, Twitchy Twitch. Twitch. What channel? Baby, what? There, guys. Am I live? Manager. I am live. Okay. Cool. Okay. Yep. Alright. Okay, guys, I got something interesting for you guys today, and what I'm gonna do is react to Ed Dutton, Nick Dixon. I think Ed Dutton's a very interesting character. I got some other stuff to look through here just to, get it lined up. Apparently, clavicular overdosed. I mean, that sounds like a lot of fun to cover. So, let's see. Let's go with this though. I started watching it, and it's just too damn interesting, guys. All right,
And of
let's
course,
go.
your rightoid friend, your right-wing friend that's permanently on the internet, he's going to say, "Well, it's the Jews. It's the Jews that are funding it, obviously." And
It's
are we
very
funding it?
interesting because
Yes.
I
And
wonder,
no.
are the Quakers?
About half the groups that are
Alright,
funding
well,
it are Jewish, fine. But about half, if not a bit more than that, are
we just
Quakers.
jump ahead
Are
here.
doing okay? Yes,
There we
yes,
go.
I'm doing all right. As we discussed before the show, I'm doing all right in terms
All
of
right.
hair.
Yes,
but not much else. Just hair. Just hair
the
for my
hair.
age. Hair
Well,
for
you've got
age.
your impressive YouTube thing in the background, million subscribers.
Well, 100,000, but yeah, good. And yeah, I've got that and some nice pictures, some paintings my daughter did many years ago. So
Yeah.
I
If you
can't
didn't have a
complain.
daughter, those
It's funny. I notice about British people. They all seem to have this white background with little pictures there. I don't know. Like I mean, the white wall in this like cellar sort of setup. I've seen multiple people who have something similar looking. I don't know. I wonder what housing is like in England. I know that you guys don't have just drywall everywhere. It must be nice. But maybe you don't have as much AC. I don't know how you would get on AC. I wake up in a pool of sweat if I do that. So it's gross.
would be sinister, but luckily you do.
They'd be a bit weird, yeah. They'd be that I loined them from other people's 7-year-old daughters, going around nurseries, waiting for them to dry, then stealing them. That would be strange.
That's a whole different podcast, as they say.
What
in
sort
the
of
biz. But,
what sort of
today, Ed, as you know,
genetically is how much of that is heritability? 0.8 heritability if you're going to steal children's drawings. All
I'll
right.
hook the audience as well. We are going to talk about a subversive, largely left-wing group that
I
undermined the majority.
You guys, I have to react to this. I want to boost this, through me talking about it. I have to react every now and then, but really I just want to sit here and listen, but I have to add something of value here. So if I can think of a story or something funny as it comes along, then that's what I'm going to do. Or commentary in general if I think that there's something worth noting. Um, Again, I apologize that this is the way it is, but I want to bring attention to certain things. So
by
here we go.
taking over businesses and banking. Yes, it's the Quakers. There was. I just wanted to do that
The
for the
Quaker
YouTube
question.
demonetization team that had their hand just hovering over the button.
Dude, let me see that. Dude, that's fucking sick. We used to the oatmeal man used to scare my brother, dude. And that's like what everybody, that's the quintessential Quaker, right? And everybody thinks that Quakers made oatmeal. That couldn't be further from the truth. It's just an American marketing campaign. But
Station team that had their hand just hovering over the button, but it was the Quakers. Yes, Ed's written a book, The Quaker
yeah, so
Question.
everybody, I just want you to know, everybody who criticizes me for talking about the Jews, here I'm talking about the Quakers here, okay? All right? And the Jews.
And it's an ostensibly kind of you might think that's an ostensibly slightly obscure topic,
And
but
I just want to, I think that the Jews are more of an issue in the U.S. Obviously, we're fighting a war in Iran. Um, I do wonder, like if these patterns are the same in Europe as they are here. I mean, it seems like the great noticing has begun in certain sense. I'm not somebody who chalks absolutely everything up to the Jews, but they clearly have a high influence on the U.S. government. Um, I'd like to get a copy of this book because I wonder if he goes into how the Quakers have affected the U.S. because certainly they were a part of the start of it, no doubt, but later on, I don't know. I don't know. Or do the Quakers are they more of like a European sort of gypsy like problem? Are the I always figured in England it would be like the ancestors of the Normans, like the upper class sort of people that are like, you know, actively going against the best interest of the country and really progressive and all that. I would have thought it would have been people with Norman heritage, the ruling class, so to speak.
it taps into all sorts of things to do with leftist psychology, the sort of origins of wokeness, and the kind of psychology of religiosity. It's very, very interesting. So, Ed, firstly, why did you decide to write the Quaker question?
Well, it was my co-author actually. It was more J.O.A. Rayner Hills. It was more his idea, and it was that he noticed an article about a group called the Center for Countering Digital Hate, or something along these lines. And of course,
I wonder if I can, let's see, I can go here, minimize that. Maybe I can open the chat here. Let's go. Twitch. Da 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 da. I'm not. Oh, I'm on the wrong motherfucking thing. Okay, hold on. Da da da. Do do. I'm sorry, guys. I do apologize. Twitch. Stream manager. Okay. The volume's off. Chat. There's my chat. Okay. So, let's see. I got a YouTube. Oh my gosh, dude. Dude. All right. Okay. Now, here, how do motherfucker. I am viewing my channel. How do I see chat here? How do I see chat here? I guess that's chat. Okay. Right. Hold on. Turn that off. No volume. Okay. So, I've got it up here. Oh shit, I had a mouse right here. That would have been nice. Okay. Um, catch up. Jeez. Alright. Catch the fuck up. Alright. I in frame. Mind the goddamn frame. Alright, whatever. There we go. Let's check it out.
And you can tell what kind of group this is. Okay, it's like Hope Not Hate. It's anti-free speech. It's anti-freedom
Oh
of
shit.
association. It's anti-intellectual. It's anti getting to the truth about the world. It's anti all that is good and wholesome and kind.
Chat.
But and of course, who is funding it? Who is funding it? And of course, your rightoid friend, your right wing friend that's permanently
Chat.
on the internet, he's going to say, "Well, it's the Jews. It's the Jews that are funding it, obviously." And
Okay.
are the Jews funding it? Yes and no, because then if
Boop,
we
boop, boop, boop.
look into who's
Boop,
funding
boop.
it, about half the groups that are funding it are Jewish, fine, but about half, if not a bit more than that, are Quaker groups, such as
Okay.
the Joseph Rowntree Trust. And your rightoid friend doesn't talk about this. Your rightoid friend spends all his time bashing the Jews, saying, "Oh, it's all the Jews. There's everything the Jews do is bad. That whatever it is that's terrible that's ever happened to Western civilization, it's all the fault of the Jews. It doesn't matter what it is. It's the Jews." And the Quakers kind of get away with it.
Say, look, everybody who's been, is harsh on me for talking about the Jews, okay? We're talking about Quakers here.
And what we argue in the book is that the Jews are actually, there's some nuance to the Jews. There's some balance. There's some diversity. I mean, yes, it's true that about 70% of Jews in America vote for the Democrats. Yes, that's true.
But also, what I would say about the Jews is that, you know, there's a difference between what the Jews in the U.S. and the Jews in Europe. I think we have the biggest diaspora of Jews here in the U.S. And I would also say that the Jews, tend to hold positions of power, and they tend to have like things that are basically statistically impossible going for them. Like, you know, all like the percentage of Jews in the country is very low relatively, but like in any political stuff, like go watch Leather Aprons, the Leather Apron Club or whatever the hell his name is channels goes through how overrepresented Jews are in a way that just doesn't make any sense really to me. I mean, I think that there's definitely some astroturfing of Jews in positions. There's definitely a lot of funny business going on with that. So I mean, just because the sheer amount of Jews you see if you watch anything of any like import in YouTube on Joe Rogan, for instance, it's like 50% of politically affiliated, people on there are Jewish. So maybe they just really have their hands in the entertainment industry. I don't know. Everybody knows Hollywood very Jewish. So, and a Zionist is really no different than a Jew in a lot of ways. So, I don't know. I don't know, guys. Let me know
They are
what you think.
broadly left wing. Yes,
Like and subscribe. Do all the fucking bullshit. Like, subscribe. Help me make a goddamn living off of it. That would be sick. You know. Uh, the thing is, this video, I don't know I have much to argue against it, but I just think it's very interesting. So, I try not to comment
it's
for a
true that they
while.
are clearly overrepresented among, for example, Soviet communism, but also in many other left wing domains. But you also get prominent right wing Jews and even Jews that are doing good for the nation that they have adopted, such as Benjamin Disraeli, the empire builder.
Or Dave, what is this? Dave Smith. Who's the guy who's very much a libertarian? I guess it's Dave Smith. I almost um, said Dave Rubin. Wait, who's that gay guy? Is it Dave Rubin? Guy who mixed his sperm with another guy and then they had a baby. You know what I mean? Very sick, nasty. Is that Dave Rubin? Yeah. He is like the craziest sort of like I don't know. I don't trust him, that's for sure. Does anybody remember when he made that thing on X with Elon Musk and it was like the new norm and it was like the most I've ever cringed at anything. Maybe we'll find that later. We'll see.
Ethnically Jewish, father converted from Christianity, and you can think of many Jews that have done
Then they
extraordinary
convert
things in
back.
terms of science, Nobel prizes, inventions.
It's funny. Jews always convert back. If I found out, if I took a DNA test and God forbid I was part Jewish, like, that's what terrifies me about DNA tests, is that I might have some of that. I'm just kidding. It really wouldn't matter. But, like,
Okay.
if I found out I was ethnically Jewish in any way, then would I reconvert to Judaism? No, not a chance in hell. But I think that a lot of people do get material benefit if they do that. So I don't know. It's kind of like if you're part Native American, you can join, their little tribe thing, whatever, and you can collect benefits that way. Like you can go on the reservation, whatever. I think even if you're only an eighth Native American, which I think I am, that's what I've been told. I don't know that I'm not, like, again, I'm not trying to be Elizabeth here, but you could maybe see it in me. I don't know. My grandfather on my dad's side looked like he was like Sicilian, but supposedly he was half Cherokee, or some group like that. Well, I don't really know. And that would have made my dad a quarter, and that would make me an eighth. So I don't know. I don't know. But really, my name is very English and Irish. So there you go. As what I've always heard is part German and Irish, and maybe that Native American too. I don't know. Maybe I'll get a DNA test one day, and then if I end up being Jewish, I guess I'll have to, you know, take a short walk or take a long walk off a short pier.
Whereas with the Quakers, no, no, no. With the Quakers, it's just
Okay,
left-wing
guys,
subvert.
let me do something fun. I'm gonna start doing this. Okay. Now I found this book a while ago. It's called The Complete Immortalia, which I guess immorality. So with genitalia. So let's read. Let's take a read. It's basically like a bunch of uh, sailors' songs or just inappropriate stuff from the past, and it's a lot of fun. Okay. A big Catholic layman named Fox makes his living by sucking off cocks. In spells of depression, he goes to confession and jacks off the priest in his box. That's really, you know, wow, wow. Let's see, when was this? When was this? These are limericks, right? Okay, so these were reserved for stag parties. Some date back to the early 1800s. Some were written yesterday, but yesterday in this book would have been, let's see, it was published 1971. So the very newest of these would be 1971. So we're gonna start. We're gonna start. Hopefully, I don't, because you get copy striked for reading these. I don't know. All right, so here is. We'll do one more. Now I'll come back to the video. Here is a father from Sparta. There was a young fellow from Sparta, a really magnificent farter. On the strength of one bead, he'd fart God Save the Queen in Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. He could vary with proper persuasion, his fart to suit any occasion. He could fart like a flute, like a lark, like a lute, this highly fartistic Caucasian. He'd fart a gavotte for a starter, and fizzle a fine serenata. He could play on his anus the Coriolanus, oof, boom, or toom, tootle, hum, to da. He was great in the Christmas cantata. He could double stop fart the toccata. He'd boom from his ass box B minor mass and in counterpoint La Traviata. Spurred on by a very high wager with an envious lieutenant major, he proceeded to fart the complete oboe part of the Haydn Ostet in B major. It went off in capital style. He farted it through with a smile. And feeling quite jolly, he tried the finale and blowing double stuffed farts all the while. The selection was tough, I'll admit, but I did not dismay him one. Till with his ass torn aloft, he suddenly coughed and collapsed in a shower of shit. Okay, I'll give that as far as these go, as very shit fart heavy. You know, I'm gonna start rating these. All right, I'm gonna give that a 5 out of 10. But if out of fart limericks, it's 7. No, no, 6.5. Okay, 6.5. And dude, one day we'll get through this whole book. And let me tell you, it gets a lot dirtier than that. I don't know, some of this I may not be able to read, but there's some really racist and just, gross, like really you know. I found this at Goodwill, and yeah, I fell in love. I fell in love with it. Okay. And this seems like it would be Ed Dutton style. I would actually give him this book and say, during your little intros where you do your funny, little funny sketches, you could really draw from this and you'd have a lot to say. You could, like, take something here and put Keir Starmer in it instead of us. Actually, yeah, that's Sparta Starmer. You could do it. Except I don't think he's a magnificent farter, but he does have a lot of male prostitute problems. So maybe there's something in there.
There
Okay.
isn't a single.
You guys, I have a strange interest in British politics and stuff. So I don't know why. And I like to comment and get involved. And there's something about the Brits that, and I know I'm throwing stones from glass houses, but like if you go and watch like a Rest is History video and you look in the comments, it's like all these high-minded people think they're better than everybody. And I mean, there's definitely that in America, right? It's just not in my bubble of what I watch. But like, when I watch British stuff, like stuff that's on the mainstream, it's like all like people telling each other to stay in line almost. Like it's crazy in the trigonometry stuff. It's like the people who watch that, I don't know. People who watch it and the comments you read in it, they're basically just like, I would love to see more interviewers of this caliber, or like, you know, whatever. Okay, but I don't truly really think they're that great faith of actors. I think they're more interested in networking than they are in anything else. I remember how Constantine, you know, had the video where he was like, there was a grooming gang victim and he didn't want to, like, implicate Islam in any way. Um, just cowardly, you know what I mean? And now all he does is promote how bad Islam is, and he will never talk anything bad about. So he's fucking always where he's always trying to be where the money is and where the influence with the more powerful people is. I just don't think he's probably doing it for any real moral reasons. I mean, to some extent, sure, but I can't psychoanalyze the man, but definitely Francis Foster. There's something, he's like dead in the eyes or something. Something wrong with that guy. I'm sorry, forgive me, but maybe he's a very nice man. But he looks like, like if if Batman and Robin was a middle-aged weirdo. I don't know. He's kind of like the redheaded stepchild over there. I don't know. Okay, talking too much.
Left wing proto woke group in the history of the West since the mid 1600s that hasn't had the Quaker hand behind it somewhere, and this one here, and the left hand, And they don't look into this. And if you look into the Quakers, then you realise this is just a deeply subversive sect that actually really punches above its weight, considering that there's not many of them. 15,000, something like that in the UK. They really punch above their weight, and it's always in an extremely left wing direction. Has your rightoid friend heard of the Rothschilds? Of course he has. Oh yeah, so the money of these people, the influence they have to pushing things in a left wing direction. Has he heard of Barclays Bank? Has he heard of Lloyd's Bank? Has he heard of Gurney's Bank? Quaker, Quaker, Quaker. Has he looked into the kind of people that were behind, as I said, every left wing movement you can think of? Prison.
I think that like the Quakers had a similarity to the Jews in the sense that they were like persecuted or were like a bunch of weirdos on the fringes of society. I'm not saying no Jews are weirdos, but you know what I mean. They were sort of like a remnant people within a society, and I feel like they, maybe like just as the Jews were, they like were traumatized into like this sort of line of thinking that they've come to. Maybe I don't know if that makes any sense. But what drives the Quakers? Is it genetic? We'll figure it out. We'll figure it
Reforms, that
out
prisons become
together.
holiday camps, getting rid of the death penalty. You were saying the other day, a feminism and women having the right.
Let me speak on the death penalty. Why would you listen, guys? Okay, somebody who's been to jail, I would prefer the death penalty if you were going to give me life in prison. Give me the death penalty over that 100% any day. I think it should be an option. And also, I think that if you have the death penalty, you shouldn't sit on death row for 20 years. And there's so much wrong with the justice system right now. But, like, you know, if somebody wants the death penalty, let me give you an example. There was a guy who was in prison in a state. He was a hitman, you know what I mean? And he was in prison in a state where they didn't allow the death penalty, right? And what he wanted was the death penalty. So he would always cause trouble or whatever. And one day he held a guy, him and a guy came up with a plan where he would be holding him, choking him out, and they would use that as leverage in some sort of way. Well, he ends up killing the guy. So that's another death because you won't give this guy the death penalty. And that's what he's asking for, you know? And I say, give them back to the Almighty, especially if that's what they want. It's going to cost us less, right? I don't know. I bet you somehow a lethal injection costs like $1 million or something crazy like that. I bet you it costs so much. Everything costs so much. I mean, the average amount that you pay to house a prisoner for 1 year is insanely high considering the conditions of a prison. It's like the same amount as it would cost to put somebody up, like in Project 8 housing or something. You know what I mean? And if I was one of those homeless guys losing my fucking mind on the street, I probably would rather be in jail. And I don't know. But it fucks with your head. Like, if you go to jail for a minor offense, you're gonna come out. Like, and I don't want to say like I'm not against law and order or anything, but like if you're a teenager, I think they've softened up too much now. But like when I got in trouble when I was younger, they were very much like very gung ho about enforcing the law, and you know. I think most judges are probably psychopaths. The judge I dealt with, mind you, this when you're a juvenile, you have no right to speak. You don't have the same rights as an adult, so you just have to sit there and listen to the judge, even if he has the information wrong. Because I'll say this: what happened was I was in trouble for vandalizing a church, I didn't vandalize a church. It was a gym adjacent to a church. I didn't really do any of the vandalizing, but they lifted a fingerprint from it for me. And, I got in trouble for that. But the judge would not hear that it was not a church. He believed that like I went to an up to an altar and started like smashing sacred icons or whatever. That's what he believed, and I could not even set the record straight that it was a gym at you know, a private Christian school. It was a Protestant one, but you know, I didn't even do all the damage there. But I cooperated. I went and did community service for the church. Pastor came down to court with me and begged the judge not to throw the book at me. And he did, but not as bad as he could have, for sure. I mean, thank God for that. But like, I don't know. I could go into it more and whatever. I definitely did not do what was right. That's bad things. It's a bad thing to do, right? So, I mean, you definitely should get in trouble. But I think that we ought to have like judges who definitely don't have psychopathic tendencies. I don't know.
To vote,
Right?
you would say the other day, if you're in that situation, no death penalty, and been voting, you're screwed. Well, who were behind both of those things? Quakers, organized Quakery. So the influence of big oats
Quackery, quakery.
is absolutely enormous, and so this book goes into a lot of depth as to how and why that is the case.
Interesting. I was going to say, let's before the show, let's try and do the whole thing without saying the J word. I thought that'd be a funny idea, but we've totally
Not
blown it
possible.
there. But you'll have people now, ironically, saying that you're paid by Israel. That's what you're going to have now, precisely.
He's
for
paid
this
by
book.
the
By the way, am I
Quakers.
in this mic? I forgot to check before he came on. And then
You are in this moment. What those
Definitely that
people
mic.
what those
Because that's the
people don't-
Quakers behind that.
what those people don't understand is that the Quakers control the Jews.
Ah,
And that there wouldn't big
Interesting.
oats is behind international Jewry,
I
and
see.
that's actually true. We looked at this in the book. It genuinely is true. So Oliver Cromwell,
What?
although he was forced to persecute the early Quakers because they disobeyed all rules and all laws in order to virtue signal, basically. I mean, that's what they're really focused around is virtue signaling. But you add to that virtue signaling that you're a pacifist. And so it's like virtue signaling all the time, and virtue signaling to the extent that it annoys people and breaks the rules and upsets people and subverts everything and makes people angry. But then when they come to attack you, you roll on your back like a Springer Spaniel and refuse to fight and say, "Oh, I'm a pacifist. I'm a pacifist," And so therefore,
I've met so many leftists like that. I don't know. Maybe they've inherited the Quaker spiritual successor to Quakery. I don't know.
that's the most manipulative form of virtue signaling because
cry
it's not.
bullying. You're
Yeah,
saying
it's
they
not like.
invented cry bullying.
Yeah, basically, yeah. It's not like the virtue signaling of the far left, where they are actually violent. When in some cases, they will push you and push you and push you, and then when you react, they will say, "Oh no, we're pacifists." And so this allows them to get under the radar of those that would oppose them. This allows them to come across as just so harmless and kind to those that would oppose them, so that they get away with it. But
Mm.
it's certainly true that Cromwell was sympathetic to them. He asked to meet with George Fox. Cromwell was obviously a Puritan within the Church of England. George Fox was an Anabaptist that broke away from the Church of England with the Quakers. He asked to meet him a number of times. He was evidently influenced by him. And one of the things that you find with these extreme Protestants is that they are very, very pro Jewish. And the Quakers were, because of various reasons we can look at if you want.
Or Jewish, huh?
Catholics basically took the view that they are the one true church, and the Jews have deliberately rejected it, whereas the Protestants took the view, well, the Catholic Church is corrupted, so the Jews were right to reject it. And the Jews heralded the way for Jesus or whatever. And they were sending missionaries over to Amsterdam to try and bring Jews into the country, and it was them that
That's a very strange thing to do. Let's go get the Jew. Let's go get him, bring him here. Uh, that takes I mean, that takes a lot of fucking psychosis. I don't know. Uh, like let's get a boat full of Jews and bring them here. Maybe they can start a bank or something.
kind of put pressure on Cromwell to change the law and to bring Jews back into the country. And then once they were back in the country, the Quakers started helping the Jews. There's a particular synagogue in central London that was almost entirely funded by rich Quakers. So there's a
So the Quakers were rich, though, right? There a lot of money to these Quakers.
there's been a lot of historical relationship between the two. Also, if you think that they're quite similar in a way, they're excluded from until the Emancipation Act of the 19th century. They're excluded from the universities, like the Jews. They're excluded from Parliament. They're excluded from all of the professions. And so, what do? They go in.
I really hope he goes into Quakers in the U.S. because there was Quakers. If you remember that show Band of Brothers, the lieutenant or captain, whoever it was, the character, he was based off of was a Quaker. So I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know. I wonder. Yeah, when did the rot really start?
To industry, and they go into banking. And banking is particularly important because what you need with banking.
Now it's like banking is kind of prestigious. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know. It's not. It pays well. I mean, you're just playing with other people's money, and it's crazy.
For banking to work, you need very high level of trust. And so that militates in favor of the people that are involved in banking are a small, very, very tight knit.
We should start a bank called White Man's Bank. It's like instead of White Man's Burden, it's White Man's Bank, and it's all of our burden. You know. Then we can have the other bank. It's called the Noble Savage Bank, and it'll be a food bank, and there will be so much seasoning. You know, like they will have all the seasoning that they require on their food. Since we, white people, they don't season their foods. You know what I mean? Um, yeah. So food bank for the noble savage, and then we could have one for black people called KFC.
Community that marry in and all know each other and are all part of the same family, essentially. Very high trust. And that's what you get with Ashkenazi Jews that run banking.
Kentucky Fried Chain Block Bank. I don't know. Kentucky Fried Coinage.
And that's what in Britain at that time, and that's what you get with the Quakers. Exactly the same thing. So there's very, very interesting parallels between the two groups.
And what about the parallels between, or the sort of through line between Quakers and woke? Because I actually was doing a little bit of research. I ended up reading this article by Paul Eastham. And he pointed out that Quakers started in the Lake District. So we can get on to your personal attack on me as well and how this is all an attack on me. But we'll get down to that later. But the Quakers, he even said the Quakers invented many of our freedoms, such as human rights, sex equality, and social justice. I was thinking, oh no. And you've got stuff in your book about this, of course.
Who said that?
He was doing a little bit of research. Or the sort of through line between Quakers and woke, because I actually was doing a little bit of research. I ended up reading this article by Paul Eastham. And he pointed out that Quakers started in the Lake District. So we can get on to your personal attack on me as well and how this is all an attack on me. But we'll get down to that later. But the Quakers, he even said the Quakers invented many of our freedoms, such as human rights, sex equality, and social justice. I was thinking, oh no. And you've got stuff in your book about this, of course. You say George Fox, who's obviously leader of the Quakers, was in so many ways a typical leftist, even though he lived long before this political division had become popular. And you go into some of the ways that he was essentially woke. Could you say a bit about that?
Well, I mean, in terms of that he's essentially woke, as you put it, what you have with George Fox is the son of a shoemaker, so not a particularly educated man, who one day he goes to a fair and his friend and his cousin. Or say his cousin's friend are there drinking together, and they're making toast and having fun. And they say to George Fox, "Hey George, do you want to come and have some beer with us? What we're going to do is we're going to keep drinking and making toasts and stuff. And the first person to fall down completely pissed, they have to pay." That's
a fun game.
And he, in a very ostentatious and completely over the top way, in order to signal both to them and almost, I suppose, to reassure himself, says, no, I would never do that. That's appalling. That's terrible. He's just really rude and horrible to them and storms off. So that's the kind of man we're talking about. Now, psychologically speaking, what's he?
Okay, I'm American, so let me look up who George Fox is, please. I know that people would drink till they were pissed in the 15th century like that. When was it that, alcohol became stronger? Because forever it was like a very, well, I mean, there was wine, but there was ale, and like the ale that like the Normans drank when they were conquering England, like, it was like very low percentage ale. I think it was more like so that you could always have a sort of sterile drink, like, or drinking water, you can catch diseases and stuff. Because I remember that, reading about the Normans, it says they were, at one point, they were during the harrying of the North, they were reduced to drinking water instead of ale. But what I heard is that ale is nothing like what we have today. It may have been 2 or 3% alcohol, but yeah, I don't know. No, but so George Fox was an English dissenter, and founder Religious Society of Friends. That sounds so gay. Um, Commonly known as the Quakers, because what they quaked in their boots. Let's see. Rejected the former established church structure, 17th century. Personal. So, did he believe in church? Like, okay, Calloused, Friends of the Truth. Another Friends thing. Okay, I can't hum the. He emphasized the inner light of Christ in every person, which protecting the stage take up, leading to frequent imprisonment. So I wonder, did he do this all for show? Probably, right? I think most people do this type of stuff are probably narcissistic. Dude, married Margaret Fell, who's movement traveling for. I wonder, is this a known figure by your common man? Probably not your common man, but say among these YouTubers, do people know who George Fox is? Was he that big of a deal? I'd love to know. I'd love to know. Where was I at? Where?
Doing there? Well, he wants to virtue signal. He's insecure. I suggest he's probably a bit mentally unstable and unhappy. And those kinds of people need a way of dealing with it is to tell themselves that they are morally superior to everybody else, that they are purer than everybody else, that they are just sort
Puritan.
of better than everybody else. That's how they cope with their
What are the Puritans? Are those Quakers? That just a synonym for Quaker? I don't know, guys. It's messy
negative feelings. They
area.
create a kind of narcissistic false self, and it both reassures them and it hopefully impresses other people. And then because they're impressed,
Yeah,
then they tell him how great he is, and then this reassures him further in a kind of interesting symbiotic relationship. So that's one of the first things we know about George Fox: this refusal to drink, this ostentatious rejection of drink. You said, "Oh, it's all about you." Well, you're not completely over the top, though, are you? You don't get angry. You
I
just
don't
go,
drink.
"Oh, I don't like drinking. Oh, dear, I'm northern." So
I have drunk in the past. I've drunk a lot in the past, but I don't drink now. And I read your thing on not drinking in the book, and you say that it's
I don't really drink. Not because I don't like drinking, or I mean, I used to drink a lot, but I have sort of chronic pain, and it's a risk that I don't like to take because I mean, I like drinking. Don't get me wrong, it's great, but I always feel the next day a bit more like sort of depressed, and I could always deal with that if your life is going well. There's no problem. But if your life's not going well, drinking is probably gonna make it worse. But I mean, I would always, if I had to have a drink, I would have a drink for sure. And if I was around drunk people, it's impossible to not drink because you're gonna fucking lose your mind around drunk being sober. Um, but yeah, I mean, I have no real. I would say I don't drink for not because I can't control myself or anything. It's just not worth the health risk to me. I would do it if the opportunity was right. I would have maybe a little, as they would say, a little cheeky bit of something if I was with a woman for sure. If I was on a date, why not have a glass of wine? But if you have two, they're gonna judge you for that. Oh yeah. We all know that.
It's you associate it with low impulse control, weak genetics, Machiavellianism. I mean, I've got quite good genetics. My grandparents all lived in the 90s. Parents playing tennis in their 70s. I think I'm
I think I got good genetics, but I smoke cigarettes and I've definitely injured times. Actually, when I was born, my mom thought like maybe I had a touch of cerebral palsy, just a little touch. And they also say that, if you have a little bit of cerebral palsy and not too much, now you have to fact check this, but like if you have a little bit of cerebral palsy and not too much, that on average, you will have a higher IQ than your average person with that level of cerebral palsy. But I guess there's a point where it stops making you more intelligent. I don't know. But my mom was a type 1 diabetic, you know, the not the kind where you're not because you're fat, you know what I mean? So if it wasn't for the modern age, I never would have been born. But I they had to give, what is it, progesterone and all this shit that when you're born, it has all these, it correlates with a lot of things down the road. We have so many things going on that will correlate with something bad later down the road. And I don't know. Um, and the fact that birth control is all the women are pissing it into the water supply and it can't be filtered by our filtration systems and there's estrogen in our water. I mean, that's not good. You know what I mean? I think that makes Quakers of us all.
just old, don't want to drink. But you're linking it to all these things. You're saying it's a rejection of the social norms. If you get drunk and can't control yourself, it must be
Mm,
have low impulse control. So
yes, I think there's probably some truth in that. I've always very suspicious of, like, Boris Johnson, for example, doesn't like to get drunk, and if you get
Donald
drunk,
Trump's never had a drink.
I think he's had a
If I was to drink, that one of the main reasons would be to get drunk. I mean, um, I can have a drink easily and stop drinking. I mean, especially as I get older, the reason to drink stopped being to get drunk. But it used to be I want to, get blasted. You know what I mean? I don't want to. The whole. What's the point of having a drink? Like, yeah, having one or two as a social lubricant. That's great. You know what I mean? And it is the right way to drink in a lot of ways. But you know when I was younger, I think most people, a lot of people, they when they drink, it's because they want to get drunk. You know what I mean? And bars nowadays, it's like you start getting drunk and they cut you off, and it's like, what the fuck do you think I'm here for?
drink, but he doesn't get drunk. But well,
No,
his
he's
brother
never
was.
because of his brother. Yeah.
Oh well, yeah, but it does make you. I mean, we're going off topic a little bit, but fine. I'm happy to do this. If you think about what you're doing when you get drunk with somebody, you are essentially in a way being vulnerable with them. You are.
Dude, I would love to talk to Ed and just have him analyze everything. Like, I'm hitting this vape, and he'd be like, "Oh yeah, that's like 0.06 correlates with the fact that you might have web toes or whatever he would say." Like, I'd have a drink with him, 100%. I'd have 10 drinks with him.
Vino veritas and all that. You're going to be more open in what you say. You're going to be more open in what you think. You're going to be a slightly different version of yourself, a more open, genuine.
On that point, I guess it's like, you shouldn't drink with people you don't trust then, because you open up. It is a sign of trust, like he's saying. And I think it just goes to show you how much more low trust of a society we're becoming that you can't really trust yourself to be drunk around people. There are times where if it was in the social media age, like there would be some very humiliating things of me being drunk. Let me tell you.
Less controlled version of yourself. That's what you're going to be. And so, if you're prepared to get drunk with somebody, then you're kind of indicating that you have sufficient trust in them that you can be that person and it will be fine. And you have sufficient trust in yourself that you know that you won't do anything unwise or say anything stupid or anything particularly ruinous. So you can see how, therefore, getting drunk with somebody is a
So there's a positive and a negative. The negative would be, or I mean, there's a something that you positively have to do is like, uh, you have to you have to, have control of yourself. So if you have that sort of control, doesn't matter who you're drinking with, you can control yourself, but then there's the other side of who is that person you're drinking with. And if you don't trust them, you shouldn't drink. And it does show low impulse control to a degree if you don't trust yourself to drink around a person who, if you slip up, something bad could happen, right? Like imagine you were in like a BBC documentary where they're trying to gotcha on some people. You know what I mean? Like trying to find the white supremacists or whatever. You know what I mean? Would you have a couple of drinks with those people, knowing that it was a setup? Say you were with Louis Theroux or whatever. Would you have some drinks with him? I think I would, but you still would have to be careful what you let slip. But personally, I don't really have a filter anyway, so a lot of times, um, so whether I had a drink or not, I'd be fucking just speaking my mind.
Is a very interesting way is a very important way of bonding with them, that you can trust a person who's prepared to get drunk with you, who's prepared to in a way allow themselves to be slightly
Exactly.
vulnerable and uncontrolled with you. So that's why I think that's why it's important. It's an important means of kind of holding society together socially, that people are prepared to relax, as it were, with each other like that. And so people that aren't prepared to do that, and Donald Trump, you say, as an example, I'm told that Boris is an example, that he will drink, but he won't ever get drunk with people. It tells you that he likes to keep in control, that maybe he is concerned that there's a part
Maybe, maybe his face gets red. He looks like the type of guy whose face gets red when he drinks. You know what I mean?
of himself that will come out when he's drunk that he doesn't want to come out. So that's one of the
I I've just something I don't understand about British culture is like why was Boris on that bungee thing waving all those flags, you know what I mean? That seemed really ostentatious for a Brit to do. I don't know. You Brits seem very reserved and dry humor and all that sort of thing, but then you have Boris Johnson doing that and then he betrayed you guys, so I don't know. The psychology of Boris Johnson is like, in my mind, I'm translating it from an American point of view, but he seems like he's a frat boy who would say and do anything to just maintain popularity. He probably in school, was a person. I don't know. I wonder what his early life was like. We should look into that maybe.
and also there's a degree to which a certain level of it kind of keeps people quite happy, because you get a buzz and that buzz lasts until the next binge. So I think there's lots of positive things about drinking, but anyway, the
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
he was fundamentally against this.
It's weird because in Britain, everybody drinks a lot more, and they drink, but they monitor their drinking a lot better. Like people in America are hard drinkers. And I'm not downing on like I'm not gonna say that they're better drinkers than Europeans. I'm not going there, but there's a lot more alcoholics, I would think, like and the sort of alcoholics that are like binge alcoholics, you know, more so binge alcoholics. I think you guys got more low level alcoholics. We'll see.
So that's the kind of person that he is, and so the theology that he constructs is this very very left wing theology, where it's left wing in many ways, whereby he's basically saying the Church of England is completely hypocritical. He calls the churches steeple houses. You should have nothing to do with the Church of England and hierarchy, anything like that. So all of it is
Wait,
about
wait, wait,
it's
wait.
very very left wing is, and so the theology that he against this. So anyway, the
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
he was fundamentally against this. So that's the kind of person that he is.
Hold
He
on.
because you get a buzz and that buzz lasts until the
Sorry,
next
guys.
binge.
Wasn't paying attention.
So I think there's lots of positive things about drinking, but anyway, the
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
he was fundamentally against this. So that's the kind of person that he is, and so the theology that he constructs is this very very left wing theology where it's left wing in many ways, whereby he's basically saying the Church of England is completely hypocritical. He calls the churches steeple houses. You should have nothing to do with the Church of England and hierarchy, anything like that. So all of it is about signaling equality all the time. Equality, equality.
So did he like go to like just a tiny wooden church where the walls were totally bare? I know we have a lot of that in America where it's like, we're so Protestant like that. Our church is just a wooden shack. It's that itself is a way of signaling. I think that churches should be beautiful places. You know what I mean? I think that's a big tragedy here in America that there's a lot of non-beautiful churches. The best churches are Catholic ones as far as looks go. Um, as far as aesthetics, or maybe Eastern Orthodox. I've never been to one of those churches, but you know, point being, it's different. It's different. So I wonder if this guy was just like, you don't need church at all. It's just your relationship with God, you and God, and no community there. You just have a straight relationship with God, which I could get down with that idea because I really do think a lot of churches are corrupt. I mean, in the U.S., it's very strange because there's just all these Zionist churches. Hopefully they're waking up to it, but that alone, you know, makes it strange. And there's so many churches here where nobody says a word from the Bible. They just you hold the. This is how you tell if a church is real. Does the guy open the Bible at all? You know what I mean? Let's see.
Equality, whatever it is, doffing your cap to people, no. Using the formal you, no. Anything like this that's about structure and order in society is unacceptable. Now that
That's
doesn't
fucked
work,
up.
of course, society wide, because we know that the societies that win against other societies in the battle of group selection are going to be ultimately high in positive and negative ethnocentrism, and they're going to have order and they're going to have structure, a bit like an army. And we can come later to what happened when the Quakers took over an entire state, which was chaos. Um, but but
Where?
but that's what it's about. It's about finding a niche in a society. Remember, this was a time close to the more the minimum. This period, 1650, it was extremely cold. It was because it was extremely cold. People were under a lot of pressure. There wasn't enough food. There was a lot of stress. There was a lot of mortality salience. There was the
So a survival strategy would have been to like be a crazy Quaker and to socially signal that you're pure, and then maybe people would throw you a couple bucks. Not too much different than how YouTube works, huh?
civil war. It was a very difficult time to be alive, and so you have to find a niche in which you can survive. And in that context, wealth, basically, socioeconomic status was the big predictor of survival. The richer 50% of the population had about double the complete fertility of the poorer 50%. So you've got to find a niche. So what's one possible niche you can go for? You can go for the niche of covertly attaining social status. You can be the middling sort, as he was and his followers were, shoemakers, people like that, craftsmen. And so you're not at the top, but you're in the middle. So how can you get a bit further up the hierarchy if you're actually psychologically a bit afraid of a fair fight? And of course, it's like how women get to the top of the hierarchy. You covertly play for status, you virtue signal, and you purity signal. And then people are impressed by this. And then if you ultimately then say as well, oh well, look, I'm pacifist. I would never hurt a fly. I'd never hurt anybody. Then and this insistence on this
It
allows.
seems like this Quaker ideology has affected more than just Quakers, you know what I mean? So if you were really trying to quantify, you know, he's saying about half of it is Quakers and the other half is Jews. If you were really trying to quantify it, though, like Quaker ideology has spread to non Quakers, like how a Zionist ideology has spread to people who are non religious. You know what I mean? So, very similar in that sense. Why am I not subscribed to you, buddy? There we go. Right.
Allows you to get past their radar, get past their suspicions that this might just be a manipulative tactic, and so you get a bit more status, and so your genes are passed on.
All right.
Um,
One sec, guys. Let me get soda. All right then.
And I see that as the Quaker evolutionary space. They're a bit like a kind of proto-ethny. The Jews are an ethnic group, and a proto-ethny in that he instructed that you have until the mid 1800s. This was mandated. You could only marry other Quakers. You had to marry in. There was all kinds of monitoring of your behaviour. So it sort of sucks in a certain kind of person. So that's their niche, and it is therefore a niche because of all the focus on equality as a virtue signaling. It is a niche of
Sorry, hungry.
always being left wing on every topic you can think of. It is therefore a niche because of all the focus on equality as a virtue signaling. It is a niche of always being left wing on every topic you can think of.
Very interesting. I mean, quickly on the Trump thing, so that people don't comment in on YouTube. That's basically because his brother was a drug addict and alcoholic and said never drink. And Trump always tells his kids don't smoke, drink, or do drugs. That's probably an outlier. But yes, on this, interesting that they were against hierarchy.
I bet you Trump has done cocaine though. I wonder if people, if you lived in that area, you probably did do cocaine. Hell, I would have been sick to have been alive when the cocaine was in your Coca-Cola. I would have been drinking the shit out of that.
Tolkien, who was a staunch Catholic, was pro hierarchy, and he said doffing a cap to the squire might not be good for the squire, but it's good for you. So he believed in hierarchy; it was actually good for people. Whereas the Quakers very much the opposite. And this ties into something that I'm very interested in, which is this inner light they believed in. So as part of their kind of radical egalitarianism, where they didn't believe in the church hierarchy and so on, they also believe we had
This inner light thing, it's strange. I see people, like my profession, I deal with a lot of new agey sort of people. A lot of times I'm sending love and light to you, sending you love and light. I wonder if that's a heritage of this. And that there's still, we're not going to talk about anything specific. We're just going to talk about the light. The light may bless you. Strange, right?
had this inner light.
There's a ton of people like that. And it's kind of like occultic now, but
this sort of still small voice of God in our hearts, so that everyone is there. It's their sort of person. It's a high. I mean, Christianity is a personal God, as C.S. Lewis has talked about a lot, but this took it a step further to sort of almost be new age spiritualism. Basically, we're all just individuals and we all have our own relationship with God. You know, those kind of sort of people that just say, "Oh, yeah, I've got my own relationship with God and Jesus," and they seem to just be able to do anything they want. It's incredibly permissive, and then they just say, "I've got my own." They're like an OnlyFans mod, and they say, "Well, I've got my own relationship with Jesus." So you're like, I don't think he would like that.
yeah.
So it almost seems to be that solipsistic modern new age spirituality.
See, I mean, that ideology has even infected us, and I think a big part of it's laziness.
Yeah, there's actually a guy who's professor of Quaker studies at the University of Birmingham, and his name is James Pink Dandelion. And the reason he has that unusual name is because he used to be a sort of New Age hippie. And then while he was a New Age hippie, and this was during the miners' strike, which in 1984, and you can imagine what side he was on, he got talking to Quakers, and then he went to a Quaker meeting house and whatever. And then and this is how it happens, by the way, it happens in connection to Quakers. He was touched by the inner light. And he was very attracted to the Quakers because the Quakers, very similar to New Age movements, i.e., they're highly
It's strange, I just said that. That's very strange. Sending love and light. And trust me, I know about the New Age people, right?
egalitarian and go on and on about equality. They're not democratic, i.e., they don't take votes. It's kind of the will of the group is somehow discerned, and they're pacifist. And so then he decided that.
Strange, in pacifists, there was Quakers who fought in World War II. Well, at least according to Band of Brothers, that Quaker propaganda.
And this is very interesting. He decided that, well, the fact that I am called whatever his original name was is patriarchal and is a reflection of this patriarchal, unfair, unequal system. And also, my name was given to me by somebody else. And who are other people to name me? I should name myself because I am me. And
oh man, yeah, there's a lot of a lot of people who worship themselves these days, aren't there? I worship. Come worship at the altar of my super goddess body, or whatever the fuck. It's crazy.
And so therefore he gave himself this new name of Pink Dandelion. And I think that really reflects well the whole thinking, which
He
is
named himself Pink Dandelion. What year was this? Fucking hell. I'm a dandy. I'm a dandy boy. Dude, you're just setting yourself up to be called a dandy.
that um, in a sense, it's kind of almost Gnostic. You are touched by the inner light.
It
And
is.
what that
It
means,
is.
in a sense, is that God is in you.
Strange that this has made its way to me somehow. So I do think this Quaker question is.
And therefore, your conscience is God telling you what you have to do. So, therefore, any kind of law and order is completely ridiculous.
Yeah, what if your conscience says just stop oil and you gotta lay in the street? You know what I mean? That is a Quaker heritage.
And from this, you get a strand in Quakerism known as antinomianism. I think it's called antinomianism, where there was a particular Quaker martyr in New England
Ed, send me a free copy of your book, please.
in the late
Please.
17th century, called Mary Dyer. And she advocated exactly this. She was touched by the inner light. And so she argued that, well, she shouldn't have to obey the law. There shouldn't be laws and things like that. Everyone should just act according to their inner light. And this was so heretical and so appalling to the
That is a
Church of England,
terrible
Anglican,
idea.
Quakers of whatever.
A lot of people's inner light is what I would consider inner darkness.
Where she was in New England, in Massachusetts, that they cast her out of the community and made it quite clear that if she ever came back, they would hang her. And so she went away. She went back to England, and then she did come back and went around preaching around Massachusetts about the inner light and all this, and then she was hanged. So it's basically their theology is something like, well, we are all
God.
chinks of divine. Those that have felt the inner light,
pieces of the divine
are
light.
all chinks of divine light.
Yeah, dude. I've heard this.
The darkness.
I've heard this through New Age, though.
Who define who they are, rather like God. I am that I am. In a sense, you are God because you have felt His divine
It's weird
light,
how
his inner light.
It's weird how I've heard all this.
Now shines out from you, and I think that's very similar to the worldview of woke people. This idea that you can, if you say you're a woman, well, you are a woman. You define who you are. Or of James Pink Dandelion, if I say I'm Pink Dandelion, that's who I am. I define who I am. Like God is that He is and defines who He is. And I think this is kind of it's a kind of proto postmodern nihilistic, as you said, solipsistic view of the world. There it is. This most subversive.
It's nihilistic, that's true, but in their heads it seems non-nihilistic, but in its action it is totally nihilistic because you basically forsake all group bonds, and you forsake all sort of organization, and that can only lead to one thing.
Illogical, anti-empirical view of the anti-scientific view of the world we've ever seen in woke and whatever postmodernism, and there it already is in Quakerism. They got there first. They got there first. They got there long ago. And that's not the only example. This was used, as they argued this, when there was a load of Quakers that were arrested at a Quaker meeting house in London a few years ago because they were planning to break into an airport or whatever and mess around with machinery. And they argued that you are stopping us from carrying out our worship. And what their worship was to go and mess around with machinery and break stuff up because that's what their inner light told them to do.
That's fucking crazy.
Well, fascinating.
You're gonna have people who say the inner light told them to go and do a Columbine. I guess I have to be careful with my phrasing here.
Ironic if we got cancelled for saying chinks of divine light.
That's what I was thinking.
More controversial topic.
I always thought that like there'd be a good meme, a chink in the armor, and you just put a suit of armor, and you have a little Asian man hiding in there, like a Viet Cong, like he's in the armor, and he's like, you got the buck teeth and everything.
That's just a joke. The I'm quite disappointed that they're so associated with where I'm from. I mean, George Fox's wife was from what is now Cumbria, and he was doing big speeches in Cockermouth to like 1,000 people and stuff. Because I always think being part of a long tradition is a great and comforting thing, and finding out one's name goes back centuries in one's local area and so on. But they're the exact opposite of that. And a great example of this, another example, and on this woke topic, is the woman who the Quaker woman who claimed she had been reanimated, to quote your book, as a genderless evangelist by the name of Public Universal Friend.
Public universal friend. Dude, that is so culty. It's so culty. And now reincarnation, it's like it truly is. You can believe whatever you want to believe. And what's strange is, if you look up near death experiences on here, there's a ton of people who talk about this light and stuff. And part of me wants to think that it's like they were dying and it was like their brain, trying to preserve their core memories. If any of those are true, I would love to see like a real study on near death experiences, discluding all these people who like just are saying that they died one day. There's no actual proof of it. You know what I mean? And it's hard to get to the bottom of. It's something that's hyper saturated, which tells me that like I don't know. If something has the zone flooded, I feel like there's something there.
Which I thought Pink Dandelion was a bad choice of your own name. Public Universal Friend. That's about as woke
Public urinal.
as it gets.
Yeah, this is fascinating. She had this particular woman had a religious experience, and then after that religious, she was a Quaker, and then she came around and she said, "Oh, I am no longer man nor woman."
Did these people try to justify this with the Bible, or was it just, oh, the light touched me? Or do they still believe in Jesus? Like, I don't know. I don't know. Who were the people at the Salem witch trials? Were they Quakers?
I am simply pure Quaker. I am pure Society of
I gotta
Friends.
look that up.
I am Public Universal Friend. And she used to get extremely angry if anybody would call her by her dead name. And she used to get extremely angry if anyone referred to her as she or her or whatever. As far as she was concerned,
Jemima Wilkinson or Gemma
Jemima
Wilkinson.
Wilkinson. That's all right, Jemima Wilkinson.
It's my artistic memory.
As far as she was concerned, no, she was public universal friend. And I find it very interesting that in Wikipedia, of course, the woke encyclopedia is Wikipedia. They refer to her by her desired pronoun in the Wikipedia article. Her desired pronoun being friend. So so she's triumphed after death in the world of Wikipedia. But yeah, this preempts. This is again this idea of the inner light, and this idea that you define.
Sorry, guys, hold on. Let me see. Difference between Puritans and Quakers. Puritans and Quakers, 17th century Protestant group, vastly different beliefs. Into severe okay, so the Puritans persecuted the Quakers in New England. So they were Calvinists. They believed in predestination. Is that what all Calvinists believe? Predestination? It's funny how all Christianity, instead of being Christian, you're a Calvinist or a Quaker or a Puritan. Like, there's something seriously wrong with us that we can't just have one thing. There's enforcement on culture, but there's absolutely none on religion. And I don't know if I should invite that because I don't want to be forced into the gay race communism religion, but you know, I don't know. I'm okay. Yeah, so Puritans just relied on the Bible, right? Quakers personal experience. Okay, okay. So this could be the conflict of our time. This might. Now, where did the Freemasons fit into that? It's weird to think of a time where there was Quakers running around, while there was Puritans running around, while there was a bunch of Freemasons running around. Um, it's weird to imagine all these people coexisting in the U.S. I know that they were more separated in those times. I wonder if they ever fought. Let's see. Did the in the U.S. specifically, did the Quakers ever ever fight a war, or were they always pacifists? Oh, gosh darn it! No, don't do that. Okay, yeah. So you guys can read that. I mean, but you had to pick a team. Would you pick Quaker or would you pick Puritan? God, both sound so miserable, right? That's like the extreme ends. Like either the most rigid sort of Protestant, like pick yourself up by the bootstrap, like sin, you're highly sinful, like feel guilty, don't do anything wrong, one wrong thing will burn you type of people. And then on the other end, you have what were the shit libs of the day, it seems like. So very interesting, right? Very interesting, right? So let's keep going with this. Where the frick did it go? Where'd it go, dude? Where did there it is. Okay, what the fuck's
You
wrong with
are.
me?
You define whether you're male or female. You define whatever. And she is extreme. I mean, by the standards of the time, even Quakers found like mainstream Quakers found her
You
weird.
guys like 3D printing?
But they were nevertheless prepared to accept this because it was a reflection of her inner light. So again, and another point actually that they preempted was um, they also
Oh
had an idea that they were so pure
yeah.
that they were like
I'm sorry,
prelapsarians.
guys. Okay, let's go
She
back.
is extreme. I mean, by the standards of the time, male or female, you define whatever, and she is extreme. I mean, by the standards of the time, even Quakers found like mainstream Quakers found her weird, but they were nevertheless prepared to accept this because it was a reflection of her inner light. So again, and another point actually that they preempted was um, they also had an idea that they were so pure that they were like prelapsarian people. They were like
Okay, yeah, they never. So they didn't ever eat the fruit or whatever. Let me. I gotta look a little bit more at this. What were all the different sects of religion that started the Anglosphere colonies in America? Okay, Anglicans, Puritans, Quakers, Catholics, Presbyterians, Baptists. All right, so let me tell you in my experience what I've seen. Anglicans in the South, huh? I don't I've never seen an Anglican church here. Um Maybe they go by something else. Mennonites, that's the Amish. Huguenots. Okay, let's see. Purify the Church of England of Catholic influences. Okay. So Puritans are like a Church of England but more extreme. Pilgrims are separatists. Established Plymouth colony, breaking away. Dude, what if in Star Wars this is the Trade Federation? Pilgrims. Baptists. Separation of church and state. Baptists. Okay. I'll tell you, in my experience, some Baptist churches are crazy. We used to say as a joke when I was a kid, we go, I'm a Southern Baptist, I worship the rebel flag. You know, back in the day, there was a lot of rebel. The Confederate flag used to be everywhere, bro, in the South. I don't know what happened. People are, it's become a whole thing. It used to be flown everywhere. I remember when they took it off the state building or whatever. That was a big thing here in South Carolina. South Carolina was like, I believe, the first to secede and the first to also, yeah, the first to claim succession against England and also the first in the Civil War. I believe that's the truth. So both times this state was the one who started, was always at the tip of the spear. So, you know, I'd like to look up the religious makeup of the state. But yeah, so me, I don't know. And this speaks to probably a lot of people in the US, which is strange probably to people from other countries, but you got to imagine that you grow up and then like you move or you move as a child and like the distances that we move compared to other people. So just think, I was born in California. We moved to South Carolina because at the time it was the cheapest state and one of the fastest growing, still is, as far as the upstate. And I had a mom from New Jersey and a dad from California. And then I was raised mostly in South Carolina. And, you know, I don't listen to country music or anything like that. I'm a transplant, and it's strange because I know a lot of other transplants, and or just people who are more from the metropolitan areas of the state are very much different than the good old boys. And I've interacted with them all, and as much as Southern culture can be a bit embarrassing and there's a lot of like super obesity here and a lot of shit to be made fun of about it. I think that, in the South, it's probably the nicest people. I heard Carl Benjamin in a recent video or some point says, Americans don't say thank you to each other, and it's like that couldn't be more further from the truth. If you come to the South, it's please, thank you all the time. You know what I mean? If you go to New York, it may be different. It reminds me, which is funny because I remember when a New Yorker was in town once. I was out at the grocery store, and there's this guy from New York, and he had to let everybody in the store know he was from New York, and was talking about how everything's better in New York than it is here. See, in New York, this would be this way. See, in New York, this would be that way. And then they're like sitting there like it's like, I like to talk to. It's like they come down here thinking that like we're gonna see them as prestigious because they're from New York or something, and it's like, insane. And I think like a lot of them just like are larping as mobster type people. But yeah, man, I and this state is now also being. I'm getting off topic here, but South Carolina, like I was trying at one point to have a business with a friend of mine selling. It was in the restaurant industry. Let's just say that, trying to sell fresh produce to people. And what I noticed was that all the new businesses were people that had fled California or New York or whatever. And so then they come here and now they're operating in a market that's much cheaper. If they were able to run a business in New York and then you're like, it's getting too expensive here, and you come down to South Carolina, well, you're going to have an easier time and you're going to be able to outpay everybody who lives here. You know what I mean? This nomadic sort of culture is not good because all of a sudden you have a bunch of, and like, look, I'm one of them. I was a person from California who came here, and we took jobs from people down here, probably, right? But it's weird because they come down here and they price people out of the market because they just have more money. You know, from a state where it was more expensive to operate, and so if you were successful there and then you come here, it becomes much easier. But then the natives get pushed out, and and then the same logic applies to illegal aliens, that then they come in and they also price out people because they'll work for far less so they can go back and spend that money for three times its value that it was here. So that's also bad. And then on top of all that, I mean, it's just it's like you have to move. We're creating this shit where you have to move. If you want to make a living, you got to drive to wherever the hell that is. And here it costs, like, you can't just live without a car. Cars cost a ton of money. Gas costs a ton of money. Insurance costs a lot of money. Uh, you have to be willing to drive so much here. I'm really envious of Europeans and their ability to not have to drive everywhere. I guess like in New York you could do that. In Los Angeles there was like, as far as I remember, there was one train that was of any real use to me, and it went from like North Hollywood to like the Staples Center. You know, I don't know, but it's not a train you could use like a subway, like the tube, as they might say. But yeah, dude, our transportation is ridiculous here. Like I got into a fender bender recently, and I tapped somebody, and they were going through a green light, right? And I was following them through the green light. They slam on the brakes in the middle of the intersection. I tapped them. I got a big old van, right? My other car broke down. I had to start driving my fucking van, right? Which is guzzling gas. So you get to this position, right? Let me just spell it out for you guys. You get to this position now where I'm driving this car. I have to pay this insane insurance. Each of those people who, each of them had a minor dent, maybe. I couldn't even see the damage on them, really. It certainly wasn't what they charged. I have to pay them back. I think it was a total of like 5 grand at least. I was like, this is insane. And in the past, there would have been times where something like that happened, and the person would just be like, "Don't worry about it." But I know sure as hell the damages to those cars were not $10,000, and the first person only one person was originally claiming money, and then 6 months later, another person's starting. They can just drop that on you, and then you get caught in this vicious cycle. You can, and then you have a fucking to pay so much just to have the privilege of driving to go to work where you don't even have enough money to pay that. It's insane. Like, so I have to somehow make a living without driving, or get rich or get a new car or something shit. But like, I can there in the US, if you're on the bottom, you're on the fucking bottom. Just like if you're on the top, you're on the top. Uh well, maybe not so much that, but I would say we live in the land of extremes, right? So, like if you fail, you're gonna fail fucking hard. I mean, it's it's like if you get out of jail, let's just say, like, this is things that we're doing as a country. You get out of jail, there's a guy, he can't get his license to drive, right? He can't afford the insurance. He can't afford to pay for any of that shit. And then you let these people out, you expect them to somehow have a job when they don't even have a house, somehow have a job and a car and all this stuff. And I know I'm sort of rambling here, but like, there's got to be a better way. We spent so much money on railroads in the 1800s. Like, we should fucking, there should be railroads dotting this entire country, man. It's transportation. I have issues with it. I think it's really you know, people sell the car as freedom, but the car is actually the prison. So I don't know. I don't know why I keep grieving my airing my grievances to you guys, but you know, it's fucking ridiculous. If I had the option to not have to need a car in any way, shape, or form, that would save me so much fucking money. If I just paid it, I could literally, if I paid $1,000 a year to not have a car, like that would be cheaper than I would pay to not have to drive. You know what I mean? And one tiny thing in your whole life, like say you have $1,000 in your bank account, this happens, you're just absolutely fucked immediately. And yeah, it's ridiculous. I don't want to drive. And it's like people need to drive so hard, you're like basically you're going to force fucking retards to drive who can barely drive cuz how else are they going to get to work? You know what I mean? Like you absolutely need a car if you're outside of the cities and it's just so it's my least favorite bill is anything to do with cars.
Adam and Eve, they were, because they had the inner light, they were in a sense without sin. And so they used to, in order to showcase this fact, they used to do what's called go naked as a sign. So as a sign that they were
See,
these sinless pre-lapsarian people, they would just take all their clothes off.
so it's funny, is that not a sin to them to go we never sinned. So we're allowed to be naked, right?
And go in public and shout about what blasphemous everybody else was. And there was a particular case in Westminster Hall in 1650 where there was a church service and Oliver Cromwell was there, as it happens, at this Anglican service. And this particular young girl goes in, takes all her clothes off, and starts screaming at them about what blasphemous they are.
Does that sound familiar though? Jeez, dude. Uh, I bet I mean, that happens for sure, but I imagine the same people who like throwing cans of soup on the paintings at museums and shit. I assume that this is that sort of same type of people.
Reminds me rather of Femen. Reminds me rather of this group. You get those women that go naked and put slogans on their breasts about the Iraq War or whatever.
Oh, right.
See,
So they do it still.
Themselves, and it's probably a quite similar kind of a psychology that would predict doing that kind of antisocial personality mixed with a bit of narcissism.
If you write anti-war on your tits, I mean that is a good way to get your message out. People will see it. But if you then you start associating tits with anti-war, and you're like, oh boy, if we don't go to war, I'm gonna see those titties. I don't know. Fuck.
Off and starts screaming at them about what blasphemers they are. Reminds me rather of Femen. Reminds me rather of this group. You get those women that go naked and put slogans on their breasts about the Iraq War or whatever it happens to be, to protest it, to draw attention to themselves. And it's probably a quite similar kind of a psychology that would predict doing that kind of antisocial personality mixed with a bit of narcissism. I remember that narcissism and that feeling that you're morally perfect and you're superior to others is probably an element of at least of early Quakers.
Which I want to get into. I mean, by the way, public universal friend. I can't think of anything more
Puff.
more accurately the antithesis of everything I believe.
Puff.
Private specific enemy would be a good
Or a
name.
poof.
I just think
Don't Brits call gay people poofs? Well, PUF, poof. Close enough, right?
that's just it's just the ultimate expression of egalitarianism is why I hate it. But on that narcissism thing.
Oh, Freudian slip there, you neurotic.
Yes, you say that Fox had been he was raised Anglican, but as you mentioned earlier, but he had this religiously intense experience at 11, I think. And then you're saying though that this is tied to neuroticism. I mean, you always claim these things. I mean, I do question some of the things you've said that martyrdom is just narcissism, which seems to me a bit
crazy.
Surely not Jesus. But on this, but you do say here that grandiose narcissism is
Well,
tied with.
let's look at that. I think you can look at that on two levels. So on the one hand, um, okay, if you think that there is a God and that some people are genuinely called by God and that some people are genuinely called by God to lay down their lives for the group because it I don't
Ugh.
know, God thinks that it galvanizes the group in some way and the group will therefore be more likely to build heaven on earth. That's your priors. Then then fine, okay, that works from your priors. But if
Or you argue that just Jesus, because he accounts for your sins, you could even argue just is called to do that, but then no one else has to be after, which is also a legitimate view, which wouldn't be. But then I suppose you'd question subsequent martyrs if that was your strict
well,
view. But
I mean,
anyway,
couldn't it be both? I mean, couldn't it be?
I think there's some martyrs that were true believers, but there was a lot of. It was very. Many people were like, you know, all jazzed up about getting what they called the martyrdom's crown. I guess that's what they called it. I remember reading this book. It was called From Jerusalem to like some other Jili or some fucking J lettered country. Jili, I don't fucking know. But I read this book and yeah, it was. Hold on.
Be that God couldn't it be both? I mean, couldn't it be that God who ultimately is behind everything as you see it realizes that a certain kind of personality type.
Hold on.
Well,
but
I mean,
anyway,
couldn't it be both?
subsequent also legitimate view, which wouldn't be. But then I suppose you'd question subsequent martyrs if that was your strict
Well,
view. But
I mean,
anyway,
Oh
couldn't
right,
it be
we were
both?
talking about
I mean,
martyrs in that book. So, yeah, I think probably some, but you know, there was a big push for people to want to be martyrs. There was people who were wanting to be martyred in that book that I read, and there was one guy, he came to it and then he chickened out on being martyred, but then the second time he went through with it. But there was like a culture of martyrdom, as far as I can tell from that book. Whenever you read something about religion, it's very hard to. It's one of the most like confusing fields to even try and get involved in that sense, because I don't know what I'm trying to say here. Let's just.
couldn't it be that God who
Oh
created?
yeah, well, I mean, it's just this culture of martyrdom. So, I mean, it certainly helped. I believe that Christianity like sort of helped the Roman Empire survive. It kept like it took us from the golden age of there to their silver age and brought some stability to the empire. And then if you count the Eastern Empire, yeah, that's what carried it on. And it's it must have been. I don't know. A lot of the martyrs I was reading about were like people who went to like Scandinavia, stuff like that, and tried to convert those people and stuff like that. I might have the book somewhere, but it was interesting because it was basically just a book about martyrs from now to the modern, or from the past to the modern day. It started with the early church, but there was definitely like a zeal to become a martyr, which I think could be a good thing for society, but like it's a double-edged sword. I mean, it might help you mobilize quicker, but yeah, I don't know, but it also has its weaknesses.
Who ultimately is behind everything as you see it, realizes that a certain kind of personality type is drawn towards martyrdom, and if the substitutional atonement model is correct, then God would understand that he would need that personality type to engage in substitutional atonement. So couldn't Jesus both be sent by God ultimately to atone for our sins and be a narcissist.
Possibly.
I don't think you'd ever call Jesus a narcissist. I think
Well,
you might. I wouldn't. I'll
if
give
he
you
was
another.
a narcissist, he'd be the only justifiable narcissist, right? I mean, if you're the Messiah, by definition, you have to be sort of narcissistic because you're the one. You know what I mean? And if we're talking in human terms, non-theological terms, I think you would have to say he probably like if you were an atheist or whatever, you probably would say he was. Could you say he was a narcissist? Such a narcissist that he wanted to die on the cross for it? Like, did he not think that it was going to end up that way? I don't think so. But, that level, that's not like the other guy who, poured gasoline on himself and set himself on fire. It seemed like that guy regretted that immediately. I think there's been a few of them now, but, it's very disturbing to see. Like, these people, they see one picture of a monk setting himself on fire in Vietnam and they decide it's time to do that. I don't know. Cleanse with flame, burn with fire.
Example, pre-Christian, Socrates struck me as the least narcissistic person, and he's known for being quite ugly. He is challenged for impiety and is trialed for that, and says, "Yeah, it's."
I don't know. Do you guys think that Nietzsche was right? Nietzsche, whatever you guys want to pronounce his name, okay? Do you guys think that he was right about
It's not a massive deal of piety, and person, and he's known for being quite ugly.
yeah, was he right about Socrates? That Socrates, he considered himself a gadfly for Athens to, help and irritate in the right way. He's kind of an irritator, right? And he did go around. I feel like if you met Socrates in real life, you'd be like, oh my God, with this fucking guy. Because he just would, like, he takes everything you say and re-questions it back to you. It's like that's a really strange personality type. I don't know if it's strange, but if you take Nietzsche and take his words on it, he would say Socrates was part of the problem in Athens and was what kind of brought it down was this inward looking inward and starting to question things, question traditions and all this stuff. And I don't know. He's a good one. He's a good one to say. Was he right? Was he right? Was Socrates right? I mean, he's definitely a huge part of the Western canon, and I mean, I'm more of an Aristotle guy for sure. I think that the right wing really likes to claim Aristotle, but you know, Aristotle sort of approached things as they were. You know what I mean? And Plato, he tried to build like the perfect society. And Socrates just questioned everybody in a really annoying way because of the inner daimon in his head, which I guess, is where we get the word demon, but he, you know, had this compelling need to like go around and question people and make them unsure of their place in the world. And the Oracle at Delphi told him to do it. I don't know, man. Maybe it was the devil. If you're religious, you could chalk it up to the devil for sure.
He is challenged for impiety and is trialed for that, and says, "Yeah, it's not a massive deal if I die. We don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing anyway. It could be good, or it could just be like a nice sleep." And he decides.
And I mean, Socrates, obviously, there's no doubting that he's a huge historical figure and that he, was important in some way. But it's it's these like precepts, these axioms that we are all working off of, that he's one of the strongest, axioms. He's definitely in the canon hardcore like that. And it's funny because I think that instead of approaching the world in a two-party system, really the true way to approach it is, are you look at the Greek philosophers and which one do you most identify with? and that'll tell you a lot. And I don't know. I think, in my opinion, I don't know. Would you choose Diogenes over Socrates? They both were like trolls, but Diogenes, he would do some fun stuff like jerk off in public. You know what I mean? Uh, that goes a long way with me. And he'd sleep with dogs. I love dogs. You know what I mean? He once bit a man for calling him a dog. I mean, dude, Diogenes seemed like a contrarian. I don't know, dude. I feel like all these philosophers might have been, you know, just a bunch of kind of crazy people. I don't know. Freaking, you just go into it. It's like there's like the cult of Nietzsche. You know what I mean? Like the Ubermensch sort of stuff. And I don't know. They're part of the canon now too. And in my mind, I wonder who really has the. I feel like we sort of fluctuate in time as to who we respect, as the philosopher, sort of in the same way that we do with Rome. Like, who in the time of Julius Caesar is the one that we glorify in a film, say, or just people glorify. Like if you're a republic, you should like, I don't know. Uh, you should like Brutus. You should like Cato. You should like. I'm sorry, Greek names are slipping me. You should have liked the people trying to uphold the Republican order, but also there's, you take Caesar into the picture. Do we like Caesar more, or do we like the people who tried to preserve the Republic? And it wasn't like that all of a sudden it's like Rome stopped being a republic. On paper, it still was, for a very long time. But there was the first citizen was made by Augustus, and it changed things. And it's strange because you can tell a lot about the times we're living in by which philosopher or which Romans, Roman senator, Roman character from the time of Julius Caesar you identify with, or like the Gracchus brothers, or the Gracchi brothers, right? They were fighting the deep state, right? I mean, so like in my mind, you want to. I don't know. It's really anachronistic, but in my mind, you always want to like put the praise on Caesar just because he's cool. You know what I mean? It was cool, but I think whether there would have been a Caesar or not, whether Caesar did that or not, eventually a system so big was going to require some sort of centralized power, and you see the same thing happening today. That power is becoming more centralized in the sense that like the president has more authority to do things than he ever did, like launching wars, like reinstating the Monroe doctrine or whatever. What have you, you know what I mean? But I don't know, very interesting. Clicky click. Come on, click.
Look, these people. He makes his case,
I think
but
you
he
can make.
doesn't.
I think you can make a case that he was not
Oh
quite that
jeez,
simple.
man.
I mean, first of all, he's drawing attention to him. First of all, he's saying things which he knows rile people up. So what's that? If you look at like the nature of the genius type, I've done a number of books on this, and if you look at these people that are these geniuses, what they seem to combine is outlier high intelligence plus moderately antisocial traits. And
And
if they
sometimes low conscientiousness.
like so exactly, so if they've got moderately low conscientiousness, then they're capable of thinking the unthinkable. They're capable of thinking things that go against current
Ching
ideas that most
chong.
people would be so beyond the pale they couldn't comprehend, couldn't allow themselves to think. but these people can. And then if they're moderately low in agreeableness, then they either don't care that their new ideas offend people, or they're too autistic to understand that their new ideas offend people, or a combination of the two. Well, and if they're a bit autistic, then they're going to be obsessive, and they're going to be obsessed with maybe to some extent with structuring the world and finding out the truth, and that kind of thing. And if they're a bit mentally unstable, then likewise the world's going to be sort of swirling chaos for them, and they're going to want to make sense of it, and they're going to be sort of thinking all the time because they're anxious, and then they're going to be coming up and generating new ideas. So I think that the person that's the genius type, and Socrates, you could argue, is the stereotype, is the typical idea of the genius. Is going to be very high in intelligence, which he surely was, and then moderately antisocial. And that antisocial.
He was antisocial. I mean, you could say that. Well, his social behavior was anti the norm, right? But he still engaged with people quite often. If read, isn't Plato's Republic based? A lot of it's based on conversations Socrates had.
Social element and also that mentally unstable element will cross over into potentially into realms of trait narcissism, and even just narcissism, and the belief that he is the most intelligent, most brilliant, most perceptive person, and it is almost his calling and his duty from somewhere to tell the truth and whatever. And then you get the idea that if that's how you feel, and you want the supply of being reassured by society that you are wonderful and important and amazing, then martyrdom is gonna reassure you of that. In the moment of death, you're going to be on a mega high.
Imagine that. I don't know. I think I could, if I was dying, maybe it would be a mega high. Maybe I'm a Quaker.
And you could argue that martyrdom is maladaptive on the individual level, however, because you die, you don't pass on your genes. But interestingly, then you could argue it's adaptive on the group level, because it's like if the group is throwing these martyrs at the society, it's saying, come on, bring it on, bring it on, bring it on, and it's inspiring other people to fight for the interests of that group. And ultimately, therefore, that group may impress people, as happened with the Quakers, with Mary Dyer's martyrdom, and James Naylor's kind of martyrdom, effectively. I mean, he died a bit after he was released from prison, having had his tongue stamped through and whatever. And it inspires the group, and then more people.
No, I'm sorry, guys. Sorry, guys. Stuff. Sorry, guys. Talking about doing some 3D printing. Hella love 3D printing. Oh shit, I'm muted.
Group is a matter of released from prison.
Let's get through this. Let's get through it.
Stamped through and whatever.
I missed all that.
Martyrdom is maladaptive on the individual level.
Okay, here's where we're at.
Because you die, you don't pass on your genes. But interestingly, then you could argue it's adaptive on the group level, because it's like if the group is throwing these martyrs at the society, it's saying, come on, bring it on, bring it on, bring it on, and it's inspiring other people to fight for the interests of that group.
Gotta
And
get
ultimately,
through it.
therefore, that group may impress people, as happened with the Quakers, with Mary Dyer's martyrdom and James Naylor's, well, kind of martyrdom, effectively. I mean, he died a bit after he was released from prison, having had his tongue stamped through and whatever.
So,
And it inspires the group, and then more people join the group, and then to the
right,
extent that
right.
the group is a matter of genetics.
So, like, of the Quakers, I wonder, I wonder if like the early Christians had like Quakerish sort of traits. I mean, like I'm a Christian myself, I would say, but yeah, were they like? There's an argument to be made that they were kind of like the shit libs of their day. I don't know. I mean, it's totally anachronistic, but human nature is not anachronistic. So, like, I don't know if there's a through line from ancient times till now of people of a certain sort when society gets to a certain level becoming like not having an ethnogenesis but like having a new sort of religious genesis or but it's like the Quakers, they didn't they are sort of forming a new religion. Is it like they consider themselves Christians, right? I mean, but uh I don't know why you would even bother. I think they've switched to New Age. Maybe the Quakers are the New Age people now.
Then the group is more successful. So I think
And I'm sorry I have to keep interrupting this, guys, but I have to do something. Otherwise, I'll be sitting watching a video of me watching a video, and I got to give some commentary. I wish more things would spring to mind. But when you have an actually interesting conversation like this, there's not as much to talk about. Really, you should just listen. But here I am.
that it's um, there's room in evolution for it to be adaptive, to have a moderately small number of antisocial people that do useful things
Like
for the group,
Japanese, suicide.
including things like what is it that predicts being a commando, and the risks they take, and it's being an absolute
Psychopathy.
psychopath, right? So,
Yeah.
but so a moderate number of psychopaths, as long as they're correctly funneled, can be seen to be good for the group.
Which we talked about in the Bowden interview with relation to him being a kind of speaker inspiring the group. But not to make this interview all about Socrates, but I do just want to come back with two things. One, it's not necessarily genetically maladaptive because Socrates had children. His trial was late in life, so you could have children and then still be a martyr. So you would pass on your genes. Just as one counter there. The other counter is I think there's a distinction here between a Socrates type who was looking for the good, which he believed was objectively available. And he said, no harm can come, if we believe Plato, no harm can come to someone who a good man, because your soul is therefore good. And it doesn't matter what these people in the world do to you in your body, because your soul is intact. And that's the key thing. I think that's different from the Quaker idea that it sounds like you're talking about in this book, which is the inner light, which sounds a lot more, as I said, solipsistic. It's more that person thinks it's good, but where Socrates believed in objective good, transcendent, absolute value. So that is a difference.
Yeah, it's much more. For example, there's studies on people, and I find this the paradox of this is fascinating. So, if people want to become, let's say, a Church of England priest, they have to go through something called the process of discernment, where they test. I don't know how they think they can test it, but whether they believe
Oh
this person's
shit!
been genuinely called by God.
Jeez, man. Jeez, dude. I can't fucking. Nobody calls me except for during this. Let's finish this up, guys. I'm
to
sorry.
be a priest. But then, if
Jeez.
you actually look into the research on the psychology of people that actually become Anglican priests, they are elevated in narcissistic traits. So these are the kind of people that will go on about how humble and kind they are,
Oh, damn.
and their whole raison d'être is to help their community, their little parish and community and whatever, and to serve them and to vicarious, God's representative in the parish. But those people are elevated in narcissism, which makes sense because let's face it, they genuinely believe that they are called by a mega being
Yeah.
to do something
I've got a
in a way that
cousin like
most
that. I've got a cousin like that and an uncle like that. No, no, no. Let me see this. Oh, living vicariously. What did he say right there?
people are elevated in narcissism, which makes sense because let's face it, they genuinely believe that they are called by a narcissism's representative in the parish. But those people are elevated in
Oh,
narcissism, which makes
vicar.
sense because let's face it, they genuinely believe that they are
Okay, I
called
get
by a
it.
mega being.
Okay, so like vicarious is like when you're living vicarious through somebody. So I guess a vicar is the vicarious living of God, is what they're saying.
To do something in a way that most people aren't. And you with this inner light, it's kind of inherent to what they believe, and also with any kind of convert, really, what they believe is that they're a bit special. God has
Yeah,
chosen to
yeah.
cast.
Oh my gosh, dude, you're talking about my family. Like, dude, I have a part of my family that's like religious zealotry. Like, they're probably fucking Quakers. I don't know, but they also like believe in like Joel Osteen type of shit. You know what I mean? But I don't know. I'd encourage any of you guys, especially if you're not from the U.S. and you don't know and you want to see how crazy religion can get here. Check out Sid Roth's "It's Supernatural." It's fucking hilarious. Crazy. I mean, I'd love to see what Ed had to say about that. We're gonna have to cover Sid Roth on here, dude. I have a feeling he'll be a sort of suing type of guy, though. You know, if I ever got traction, he'd probably sue the shit out of me. That's the way I feel about him. Allegedly, I allegedly feel certain ways, but now that I've already said something was my cousin, I'm not gonna. Oh, I said cousin, shouldn't I? Okay, there's things that I'll save them for another stream, but yeah, it's very. I'm connecting dots in my own life to this sort of thinking, and so what he's saying, basically, this is what I think is like. He's talking about how half of it is the Quakers and half is the sons of Abraham. But like I think that in the US that's what we would just call the Zionist, right? Like instead of a Quaker, I think Quaker is just an antiquated term for Zionist right now. Because you know, just because maybe in the US that's what you could I mean, that term has died off a bit, but I don't know. I'd call them charismatics. Is that what the Quakers are now?
His light upon them, and he hasn't to other people. And it's interesting, and it's an interesting paradox, I think, with religiosity in general, because I
Let me okay. All right, hold on a second. I think I have to do the Sid Roth thing. I have to. Sid Roth, baby thrown on ground. This is fucking insane, right? Okay, yeah. I want to give you guys an idea of what is this Quakery? What is this? I'd say these are Zionists, but also they're fucking insane. And I'm gonna tell you, I have people I know people that are like this. So
Throws the baby against the wall. The baby. Then the baby's on the floor. Have you ever seen someone play soccer? Have you ever seen them kick a soccer ball? He does that with the baby. Throws the baby against the wall.
Fuck, dude. Okay, okay, so Sid Roth will just platform anybody and do. Oh God, I should save some of this. Let's see. Hilarious. What the fuck? Let's just see.
Body is coded.
Nothing says divine miracle.
Okay, god damn. I don't need a snarky atheist. All right, just give me his crazy.
There will be nothing that you're going to see that you've ever seen before, because we are going to have a show that is totally directed, produced, and written by God the Father.
Welcome to the
Dude, I don't need you, guy. Oh, I fucking. Oh. These are like, that's like the disillusioned son of a Quaker. That's a good insult. You son of a Quaker, you. But no. And then I also think about people like David Wood, and it's like, he's still a fucking Zionist, man. Man. The L's we're taking these days are
I would
just
argue that a lot of the
crazy.
people I know that are fundamentalist Christians are, and the studies on them back this up, are very pro-social people. They're very high in agreeableness, very high in conscientiousness, very mentally stable. And it's almost like, because they're so agreeable, they see God, they see external signals of internal states everywhere, because that's what agreeable people are interested in, empathetic people.
That's kind of like schizophrenia, like seeing agency where there is none. And also, one of these religious people that I'm talking about that I'm related to is probably schizophrenic, probably undiagnosed because their family's crazy like that. They don't believe in, a lot of shit. And I'm not gonna lie, this guy's a danger to society because he just believes, like, I really shouldn't get into it, but he, this person believes that, one time he told me, okay, one time I was in passing conversation, just having a bit of a chat, I guess. I forget what we were doing, some sort of, like, I think we were doing some landscaping or something, but, I was like, we were talking about life. I don't know what the fuck we're talking about. All right, but I was like, yeah, somehow death got in the conversation. I said, yeah, if I died right now, I feel like I had pretty good innings. I wouldn't be upset. I think I'm good. And then, like, a year or two later, he was like, that day God told me that I had the power to whether to let you live or die. And, like, I could just have let you die, but I decided to let you live. And I was like, what do you mean by, like, you were going to kill me? And he's like, no, I just had that power. And I'm like, okay, that's fucking nuts. I think this person might be getting better. I hope so. They were smoking a lot of weed, which is not something somebody who seems schizophrenic should do. And then another thing, same person lit their own car on fire. I'm not gonna. I have the picture. I have the receipts of that. Same person and his. Okay, but what can I say? I'm trying to not give away too much here. But that's one thing he said, like he had that sort of power. But oh yeah, this is what was so dangerous about him, is that, like, he would be driving around speeding, drinking, and be like, dude, you're gonna crash the car or something like that, right? Like, you're gonna get us killed. And he's like, you don't have enough faith in God. And it's like, no, dude, it's not that I don't have faith in God. It's that, like, you're driving like a maniac and thinking God just takes care of you, like that you don't have to worry about your agency in life, and that God's just Jesus take the wheel sort of thing all the time. And this has led to personal disaster for this person multiple times. But they're absolutely taken care of. They don't have to worry about anything. And they don't seem to feel any like it's I'll get them on stream one day. I had an idea for a stream because I know so many fucking crazy people. I had an idea. I just want to start a podcast with these certain few people that I know. I think there's really like a side of America that people don't understand, that even some Americans don't understand, but like foreigners definitely don't understand that there's something in the water. I mean, I could do a deep dive on some of this shit, man. I think I have a bit of a unique perspective having been West Coast father, you know, New England area mother, raised in the South. The only experience I'm missing is the Midwest. You know what I mean? And let's be frank, nobody really likes it there. I drove through Oklahoma. That's not the Midwest, but you know the Great Plains or whatever. I drove through Oklahoma City, and it was probably the worst city I think I've ever really seen. I don't know. I drove through there on my way to California once, and like I just drove around the city looking for any sort of bar or a pub or whatever to stop in or whatever. Drove through the city where I went to where all the biggest buildings were. Surely there's something here, and everything was either like a Chase Bank or like it was nothing. It was just all corporate stuff. So I don't know. That's what Oklahoma City seemed like to me. And also, when I was driving through that flat part of the country where everything's super flat, like you'd see chain link fences and there would just be trash blown up onto the chain link fence, just constantly held there because the wind just holding the trash into the fence because you're in that flat, windy area. But uh I think, you know, I wouldn't be derisive towards middle America, but it's just something I don't have an experience with. So, you know, I could speak on a lot of the other things, you know, but there's also a lot of Americans who have just they've never leave where they're from, or they fucking leave where they're from and leave it in the dust. And, it's a further aggravating thing to it further aggravate or further dissolves any sort of identity we have. You know what I mean? And you combine that with cars and technology and the isolation. You know, I don't know. It's
And
crazy.
then they therefore also see God's hand behind the world and feel his presence. But at the same time, they genuinely believe that they are saved by God and other people aren't.
Oh, by the way, this person I'm talking about also at one point thought that, you know, he was Jesus, you know, and he confided that in me, into told to me. Eventually, he got over that, but he still thought he was special and the special in one way or another. Told me he always had sort of an obsession with like the chosen one, the Messiah. So like, who was it? There was somebody who wrote about the stages of development, and one was like the messianic stage. Like Jordan Peterson talked about it a lot, and he said that that one confused a lot of people. I think it was some French writer who came up with these things, but you know, I understand the messianic phase from knowing this person, right? Uh, And I'll tell you, you know, the other story. Okay, let's just go ahead and get all the stories about this guy out. Okay, so the other story is he lit a car on fire. Right, so he was doing landscaping with a friend of mine. I hooked them up so they could do a job together. He had a trailer hitch attached to like his little car, which was like a Nissan or something. But he was riding with my friend who I'm no longer friends with this guy because he's like that's another can of worms. I won't get into that. But so he goes. My friend goes inside. When he comes back out, the car is absolutely just burning, just like Hollywood style. The car is up in flames, and my friend, who has to pay child support and shit, had to go. He was like, "I gotta get the money." He's in there, goes in there, and he's grabbing flaming money out of the car, and he gets third-degree burns on his hands, right? And and so when this was happening, I get called over by my friends, or by the father of the other person, the father of the person who started the fire, and to pick up the other person and do something with him. And like the father of this person, the same person who has ripped me off every time I've done any business with him. Total rip off, totally Jews you. He's a Zionist, so he totally Zionisted me. You know what I mean? And just total, like, I'll get into that another day, just how messed up that was. But when I had to come pick this dude up at, I don't know, 12 o'clock at night, I come there, there's a charred out car, right? And I have to pick him up. The guy doesn't offer at all to pay any medical bills or do anything. This dude who's rich, not the one who started the fire, his father, and he didn't offer anything. He didn't give me even gas money for coming out there. And my other friend had third-degree burns on his hand, and they were trying to take him to the hospital to get a skin graft, and he's like, "I don't have the money. I don't have the money." Blah blah blah. And I'm like, "Fine, let us at least bandage it up for you." And that's what they did. He eventually had to get some cadaver skin on his hand. It was really disgusting to look at, but his hands are fine now, I guess. But it's from grabbing flaming money. But what had happened, how it happened, was that my he the crazy guy, all right, he had seen, at first I thought maybe he was trying to use the lighter as a light to look in there and clean up, but later he confessed to me that what had actually happened was he you know how if you spill some gasoline, you can light it, it'll, and then it pretty much goes out almost immediately. Well, it was all over his upholstery and shit, and he was like, "I bet if I do that, it will just go out." And he lit it, and the car fucking exploded, man. And I can find the picture. I can't, and I will. I won't. I don't have a picture of it burning. I have the aftermath, but absolutely insane. I think he was Quakerized.
So they are, a lot of these people are Calvinists.
Well, yeah, the aunt is the question, because and people like David Bentley Hart, if I'm getting his name right, have written books on universalism and why the belief in hell is immoral, because you're basically
Yeah, we gotta get through this.
sending.
We gotta get through this. I gotta leave here in like, I don't know, 30 minutes.
To hell,
so let's get through
that
this.
Can never be moral. The universalists claim, whereas others say that hell does exist. They have C.S. Lewis had a different idea, but yeah, I understand that idea that those are not chosen is a kind of, could be a kind of immoral narcissism. But and on that paradox of religion, you also have a different paradox here, which is, maybe it's not a paradox, maybe it's just two different types of religiosity, which is, you say there is a healthy one and an unhealthy one. So you're saying mentally stable people tend to be religious, presumably because religiousness is an adaptive trait. But you also say these people who have this extreme religious fervor, that's a negative maladaptive trait. And you quote William James talking about the difference between a religion of healthy mindedness and the religion of the sick soul.
Yes. So well, I don't know if it's maladaptive, but if you look at a lot of the people that are the prophets, that are the innovators of these religious movements, that's exactly what they're like. So that what they have is they display a fundamental change in identity, and there's a very strong, they're converts, and there's a very
there's a big difference between people who are religious from the start and people who have a religious experience that changes them. I think that's what happened to this friend of mine. I think it all really went off. The wheels really came off. He did LSD one time and never was the same. And then started smoking weed like crazy.
Strong before and after, like St. Paul. St. Paul, Jewish, arch persecutor of Christians, meets God on the road to Damascus, complete collapse. And then afterwards, he's the new, the new head of a branch of Christianity, essentially, complete change in identity, and that makes sense because um, if you develop a sense of identity and a sense of who you are,
And then that shatters.
and you adopt, what these kinds of people will do is adopt a self, adopt a strong self in order to paper over the cracks, because they're neurotic, they're feeling negative feelings all the time, and these
And
feelings
I think that this is the function of religion. And I think that's why religion is important. You know what I mean? Because it, despite the four horsemen of the new atheist movement and all that stuff, maybe we will keep becoming more irreligious, but I honestly think that a lot of people needed it. They need it, whether they know it or not. And they would be happier if they didn't have all this knowledge that makes them constantly feel contradicted about everything. I mean, right now, it to me it seems perfectly logical to either believe in God or not. They're both pretty. They're both uh, not bad stances either way, and that sort of confusion. I don't know. It creates another tribalization: atheists versus Christians. I mean, I just I don't know. I can't really get down with these atheists who spend all their time critiquing Christianity. Like it is kind of like how Nietzsche said with about Socrates, how he was what weakened the nation by creating all this inward reflection. And yeah, it wasn't too long after him that eventually Alexander the Great came down there and took care of business. But it's like, yeah, it's like that these people actually might be not as good, not the good people. They might be they might be a sign of when a civilization is coming down, because at least what I hear, I don't know. I don't have a source for this, guys. I don't have a fucking source, but what you hear is that like when societies begin this self-reflective phase, that you're in this point where everything starts to fall apart because people start second guessing everything and there's no zeal behind anything. But but we do also have zeal, but it's towards the wrong things. You know what I mean? I wish that the zeal of the Zionists was, we had that sort of zeal in any other context, like a good one. I mean, it's just, man, the most zealous people are always pushing for the worst things, it seems like. It makes one wonder, how did we ever progress? I guess it was because people were more just genetically healthy back then because of the high mortality rate. You can really start viewing things through Ed Dutton's lens, and it's a good lens. That's what it feels like these days. It's like everybody has like 1,000 lenses that they can use to view any one thing. It's like a kaleidos. What are those things called? The panoramic camera things. You guys know what I'm talking about. But it's like, let's look at it through a scientific filter. Let's look at it through a religious filter. Let's look at it through, a satirical filter. Let's whatever. Whereas maybe in the past, I don't know how much we romanticize the past, but maybe in the past, everybody just had one filter. That's what it seems like when you hear from secular people, even that everything was just viewed through a religious lens. You know what I mean? And that was just the standard. if that was the standard ever, I guarantee you people were happier. And another point to make on top of that is that if you look at who are the happiest people in the world, there's really no question that it's hunter gatherers. I mean, if you go by polling, I mean, they ask them. I mean, they're just happier people and more fulfilled, even though they're living the way they live. And we have given up all of our abilities for survival and all this stuff for maintaining a system that is too big to fail. If it fails, it will result in something like what happened in Russia and after World War I, right? Uh, yeah. So I mean, I don't know. And another thing is that a bone I sort of picked with evolutionary lens is why send your best men off to war? You know, war doesn't make sense as a selection process. Not anymore because the people that come back are almost totally random. Like, did you get hit by an artillery shell? That's not really a great determinant for adaptability. Like, whether you can survive getting hit by an artillery shell or, you know what I mean? So, and I also think, war robs us of the strongest men of like die. You take the top 1% of the most go getter, I don't know if the top 1%, but you know what I mean? The military is only a small percentage of the total population, even though we have a huge military. But I forget what I'm getting at here, but it's like, yeah, you send the most physically fit people off to die, and then we have a society that keeps getting weakened perpetually by that. But we're already dysgenic as hell, so I don't know. I wonder what Ed would say to that.
Include doubt about themselves, doubt about their own goodness, doubt that they are a good object, basically. And so, how can they deal with all of these unpleasant negative feelings? Is to adopt a very strong sense of identity where they tell themselves, "I am moral, I am good, I am this." But it's unstable. It's unstable. It's papering over the cracks, which are never resolved. It's papering.
That's what yeah. If you don't truly believe it, yeah.
Over the negative feelings. It's papering over the feelings that they're not quite good enough, and and the fear of the future, and all this kind of thing. And so eventually, the mental instability will become so high that then there's a collapse. Then they're overwhelmed by negative feelings, and when they're overwhelmed by those feelings, they can't think, something is wrong in my life, but I am fundamentally good. They won't think that. They'll think something's wrong in my life
Because
because
God
I'm
hates
wrong.
me.
And that militates in favor of moving over to an identity that is exactly the opposite of the identity that they currently have, of just flipping everything over.
I wonder how they thought in the Middle Ages, because if you lost a battle, it was the will of God, right? So if you're miserable, it's because God doesn't like you.
So that's the first thing. And with you do see that with evidence of that with George Fox, that from what we can see, he goes to London, and he is drawn in by, like the prodigal son, by the vices, by all of the stuff that's going on in London. And then when he's in London that he then has a really dramatic conversion experience, and he comes back.
Are we talking about Wilberforce?
As the inspired leader of this sect. And the second thing is just periods of religious fervor. So a person that is mentally stable will normally be just quite religious most of the time, and they're happy with it, and they look around, and God is there and he is watching. He tells you all is well. God is there and he is watching. The second thing is just periods of religious fervor. So a person that is mentally stable will normally be just quite religious most of the time, and they're happy with it, and they look around, and God is there and he is watching. He tells you all is well. God is there and he is watching. It's supernatural. That's DC talk. And that's how he He sees things. Whereas a person that is unstable will be, most of the time, he won't really feel God. He's not very high in agreeableness, so there's none of that empathy, transposion that I mentioned earlier. He's not very high in conscientiousness. But he's high in neuroticism, and so he feels all these negative feelings. And eventually, those feelings can become so overwhelming that they can make you ill. And so what happens when you're highly neurotic is that you're on edge, you're instinctive. And when you're instinctive, your instincts come through, and when you're stressed, and those include belief in God. So belief in God comes through because you're instinctive on stressed, and that exact same point, because there are all these negative feelings, then the body deals with it by pumping you with positive, with hormones that make you feel positive, and that's where you get a conversion experience from, where you feel
Hey,
this
hold on
things
now.
on stressed, and that exact same point, because there are all these negative feelings, then the body deals with it by pumping you with positive, with hormones that make you feel positive, and that's where you get a conversion
I
experience
feel I've
from, where you
had that experience before, and I feel like it was just from sitting silently and thinking, contemplating, and I sort of felt like a rush of blood. I don't know.
feel this, you're drowning in joy, and you drown in joy while over detecting agency, and thus seeing God's face in a brick wall, or whatever it happens to be. And then these so the periods of religious fervor, it's a conversion, and just periods where you're very religious because you're stressed, because you're high in mental instability, and then you go back to being more stable again, and then the religiousness goes away. So this is why a lot of these. There was a really interesting TV program about 20 years ago about people wanting to become nuns. And the first thing that these nuns said to these girls was, well, come back in about a year. Because if you feel like it now and it's genuine, then you'll feel like it in a year. And of course, a lot of them didn't, because they were going there, they were stressed, and because they were stressed, they were going through a
Typical.
religious phase. And so then a year later, they felt different.
It's just like when women marry, man.
Well, my friend, the Reverend Dr. Jamie Franklin, I believe, did start with a experience in an evangelical church that was a sort of peak experience, but then he's remained a vicar, become a vicar, and remained. So some have it and then continue, of course. Well, obviously some do that, but I never believe that it's all reduced to the chemicals. But we could have a very long separate podcast
I
about
don't,
that.
I
But
don't, I don't know. I don't know, Nick. I don't know the details of your friend Dr. Jamie Franklin. I mean, it could be that he became a vicar, as sometimes happens, by the way. I know people that have done this, that they become a vicar as a consequence of a profound religious experience when they're in their early 20s or whatever, and then they're blissing. That's the term for it. They're blissing. So if it's a really profound religious experience, then they remain for a long time afterwards, often years, feeling elements of this joy, and then
Damn.
eventually it dies off, and then you start to get,
That's
then
sad.
it's too late by then you become a vicar, and what are you going to do?
you're saying you're then bedded into the admin and
You're then
you got
stuck
the
in
little
it.
house, you got the meager wage, or no wage, sometimes just a house. But it's not exactly a very easy life though to get stuck in. I mean, I think you'd still have to feel your calling to do it, because they often don't even get a wage or very minimal. So
Right, so you'd have to convince yourself via various psychological techniques again and again and again. There's a guy called Simon Coleman at Durham University that wrote a book on this called Continuous Conversion. A concept on a paper, continuous conversion. So he argues that once you've had the conversion, you need to do things to induce those feelings again, to justify what all the investment you've put in. And so often with charismatic churches, they quite deliberately play on various aspects of human psychology to create religious experiences.
thanks for
Right.
watching. You can find the full version along with all my extra content on nickdixon.net.
Alrighty, fellas. Ladies and gentlemen. All three of you, if you're even there. I appreciate anybody who watches. If I could break through to the point of monetization, that would be amazing. I could start making more, put more effort into this, make better, long form content type of stuff. I'm just doing reacts now and just sort of getting my opinions out there, but I mean, I could use some feedback, and I feel that there's a lot that's missing from some conversations that I could, throw my 2 cents in that shit. So I don't know. God bless. I'll see you guys later. Take it easy. And, you know, watch out for the fucking Quakers. Please. And then you end the chat over here. Wait. And then, yeah. I end it. End stream. No, an end stream. End the stream. Is it ended? It's still there. Motherfucker. Oh. Right here. But there. Peace. Bye.